Okay. Thanks for coming, Dan.
Certainly.
I think what I'd like to do is start off with you giving the origin story. So like the X-Men origin stories, the Daniel Sachs origin story, AppDirect origin story. Let's talk about how you guys started it, where you're going, how big you are, et cetera, et cetera.
Sounds great. Yeah, so we founded AppDirect in the summer of 2009. And at the time, it was the height of the Great Recession. Businesses around the world were struggling. I was just graduating from school, and my co-founder, Nicholas, was in San Francisco at Bain & Company. And him and I had met years back, had talked about building a business for years. And I actually flew out to San Francisco to visit him and went to the Web 2.0 conference, where we first learned about crowdsourcing and SaaS, so software as a service. And we kind of said, look, this is the opportunity where technology can transform businesses around the world, but most businesses outside of San Francisco have no idea what cloud is, what crowdsourcing is. So how do we really bring technology to the world and make it accessible?
Okay, so are you two now Valley guys? Are you, like, we've abandoned Canada, we've gone to San Fran, we've made it fun, I'm just joking, but
Yeah.
Talk about why there, and then what you found culture-wise, and then how you sort of worked your way back into having a huge employee base in Canada.
Yeah, so the world has changed tremendously since 2009. So when we started and we looked at what we wanted to build, we actually realized that there's probably only dozens of people that know the technology that we'll need in order to move forward. So I think that the landscape has changed dramatically, where now we go to other markets around the world and everyone understands SaaS, cloud, multi-tenancy, and there's a lot of great markets for talent, for entrepreneurship. So when I graduated McGill, there was very little talk on campus around entrepreneurship and pretty much nothing around tech as an opportunity for students or businesses. Now, I go to campus and people are starting tech companies out of not just business school, but out of all faculties. And there's this known idea that it's cool to be an entrepreneur and to start. So I think right now we can find talent almost anywhere around the world. So our strategy was start in San Francisco because actually there were only a few people in the world that knew what we needed to do. And for that we found our CTO, Amy Sen, who came from the Salesforce App Exchange and was probably the only person in the world that knew high-scale commerce because he had worked for Walmart's e-commerce division back in the 90s, 2000s, and then built out multi-tenancy with Salesforce. So essentially, if we didn't have Andy, I think we wouldn't have been where we were today, and we could have only got that team in San Francisco. Today, there's definitely a shifting dynamic where talent pools across Montreal, Calgary, Ottawa are phenomenal. So we've expanded into Canada through acquisition and organic, and now we have more team members in Canada than we do in San Francisco. And that's created a great differentiated strategy for us as it's been more competitive in the Valley. And it's also been great to have a global employee footprint or team member footprint to mirror where our customers are.
Awesome. You have one of Canada's most sophisticated business families. You have huge investment bank investors. Inovia is an investor. So what's been the good and the bad of some of these folks? How did they handle it when you went through you talked about how you conditioned the way they think in setting goals and expectations, but everything wasn't great. So what were the highs and lows over that period?
So I think over the last 10 years, if you follow our first presentation to Inovia, the irony is that we created we called it the spider graph, and it was our vision for how we would grow over time. And it looked like a hub and spoke, and it said we could grow based on geography, language, technology type, customer segment, channel. And we presented that even before we had our name AppDirect. It was actually, our original name was Origo Network. So we presented this to the whole Inovia team. We had Sean, Chris, Crum around the table. And we said, this is what we believe we want to achieve over a 10-year plus span. And here's how we're going to measure it. And it was that same GMV calculation that I shared earlier, transaction volume. And we really made sure that everyone was truly aligned with that vision. And we were so fortunate that Chris and the Inovia team didn't just believe in what we were doing tactically to sign up our first customer telco. They really believed in the fundamentals of the vision, and a lot of their assessment in understanding us and how we work together was belief in our conviction for that vision. And therefore, we have a board of people at the table that have all understood that vision for now, 5, 10+ years, and are all super aligned with where we're going. So there's almost this expectation that there will be challenges, throughout different periods of time, and it's about how we look at the leading indicators and adapt to those changes versus putting pressure, negative pressure, let's say, on the management team or on the situation to create fear. So I think that alignment and confidence of the board is often a huge value to the company as well. And there's been many times throughout our history where I've had, Chris or some of our other board members come and do a fireside chat with the team to give the investor's perspective. And that's super encouraging for the team because sometimes on the ground you have a bad quarter and it can really disrupt people's, confidence. But having investors that really are aligned with the long term is super supportive.
Thanks, Dennis.
All right.